All right, it is slowly preparing the live stream. And we are live. So it is slowly preparing the live stream. Good evening, Golden Desert. This is our second. We are live. This is our second live stream of the night. This is Varsity Informative speaking. We have Ms. Lopatin, Ms. Narugian, and Mr. Crane judging Varsity Informative speaking, and we are so excited to show you the top 4 Varsity Informative speakers tonight. Thank you all for coming and watching, and I am going to hand it over to these 3 very capable judges to get things underway. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Campos, and the title of my speech is Worms and Why They Are a Great Time Waster. I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. Worms on a string. You've probably heard of these little cuties. They go by many names: magic twisty worms, worm on a strings, or my personal favorite, snoots. These elusive little creatures have been sighted all the way back to the 1970s and have become sighted way more in the past few years. This might be completely out of the blue, but I struggle with anxiety. I've struggled with it my whole life, and I'm now taking medication to help me with it. That might be a little bit too much to share with a chat room full of strangers, but it leads directly to my topic: de-stressing. De-stressing is a big part of my day, and I make distractions from just like learning and worshiping the worms. There are so many terrible things going on in the world today, and there's no avoiding those topics. So today, I'm going to give you that well-deserved break. Let your mind rest as I talk to you all about the worms above and the worms that roam free with us today. I'm going to tell you about worms on a string and why they are a great distraction from the world's issues, by speaking about these 3 things: the creation and revolution of the worms and a tutorial on how to play with them. Why distractions and breaks are important and good for your mind, and why the worms will set you free, or at least release a little bit of stress while you mess around with them. Worms are sneaky, tricky little beings who are about 8.5 inches long, and they come in a variety of colors. People have been starting to make bigger versions like plushies and toys, such as bees to peas. They sell stuffed toys in a variety of sizes of the worms in a variety of colors, with a variety of accessories and cool patterns. This shows that the worms have a cultish following. Today, I'll be recruiting you guys into that cult. Sorry. As you can see, worms are tied to this little cardboard piece with a very thin string to contain their power. This is the little worm. To play with them, you wrap it around something or tuck it into the waistband or belt of your pants. I don't have a belt on, but I do have pants. What you do is you hold your hand away from the string and pull it up or away, to make the worm follow the string. If you want to learn a really cool trick, you wrap it around the skinny end of a wine glass and pull it slowly and watch that baby spin. Look at how smoothly they move. It's almost hypnotizing. It's like all my problems are drifting away and the big world issues are blowing away in the wind. Speaking of which, big issues in the world. 2020 has brought so many big issues into this world, it's crazy. Even though most of these issues have existed for a long time and have only gotten attention this year, they are still big issues. Issues as big as pollution and climate change to some of the easiest to change issues, but people still make them about politics instead of just making change. like homophobia, police brutality, transphobia, pedophilia, ableism, and racial injustice. All of these issues are considered political, but could be easily changed and sorted out with smart individuals with a bit of empathy for the people. But most people only care for themselves and prefer to keep change to the minimum so that we can preserve tradition. Although so many issues affect all of us or only affect a select few, while others stand by and watch, we continue to feel small and stressed out about how difficult it is to get simple yet horrid issues to be fixed. We feel horrible because we can't do anything about these issues, but should still take breaks from these major issues. With anything to distract us, many people use meditation or medication to calm themselves down, while other people use stress toys, stress balls, squishies, or fidget toys. There are many ways to distress, but not all of them are as good as worms. The way that they move smoothly, the way that they feel so soft, the way that their goofy, dumb little faces cannot be taken seriously. There are many serious things going on in the world today, but it's good to take breaks. There's no doubting that. On the topic of coping mechanisms or stress relievers, they're kind of hard to come by. Let's say you have stress or anxiety. Of course, there are any form of stress toy, but what if it gets so bad that you need medication? What if that medication costs too much or your insurance doesn't cover it? What if that medication takes a negative effect on your body and mind? These are all questions so many people have to worry about on top of all of the issues mentioned previously. There's a few negative side effects to antidepressants, such as nausea, weight gain, a loss of sexual desire, insomnia, and constipation. While there is only one side effect to worm, and that's laughter because of their goofiness. In conclusion, there are so many big issues in the world today, and all of them affect us in one way or another. You can choose to relieve stress in any way you want with therapy, medicine, stress toys, or anything. People relieve stress in many ways, and it's difficult and different for each person to truly relieve their stress. Worms have grown and changed and make people like me who worship them happy. Distractions and breaks are good for your mental health and physical health, and they are always good for you. Buy a worm and de-stress.
Imagine a complete stranger knowing everything about you, where you're from, where you were born, and even that embarrassing story from second grade where you puked all over the floor in the middle of class. Most of us would label that person as a complete stalker. But to family vloggers, people like that are just considered fans. Family vloggers are a new phenomenon on YouTube, and it just seems like the most ideal job for parents. And they get to spend time with their family, have fun, film it, work from home, and make some serious cash. As light as this type of content seems, there's some serious downfalls to it. Family vloggers often make the mistake of exploiting their children for views and not following a strict set of guidelines or regulations for their child's safety on the internet. In order to truly understand the extent of the downfalls of family vlogging, we'll be exploring the genre as a whole. and some of its most prominent members. Once we have a general understanding of the genre, it will click in our heads how parents have been using their children for views. Finally, we will end by reviewing the regulations set in place for child safety on YouTube. Family vlogging is seen in a generally positive manner, and it is quite arguably one of the most beloved genres of content. Since these channels are family friendly, they receive the most benefit from sponsorships and ad revenue. There are thousands and thousands of family channels and countless hours of footage from personal and heartwarming moments from families that can be viewed at the touch of a button. Parents often use this opportunity to use their platforms to share details of real family issues, complications that can arise from parenting, and even shed light on what it truly means to be a family. Videos about exploring all different aspects of parenting is a common theme within most family channels. You may be wondering to yourself, this seems like a great take on content. What could possibly go wrong with it? What may start out with a well-intention can quickly evolve into a strong desire for fame and wealth once a parent begins to prioritize money over their child's privacy and safety on the internet. The ethicality of what they are doing should begin to be questioned. And we as audiences must begin to wonder, to what extent would a parent go in order to make money on the internet? Would a parent exploit their own child for it? Let's explore how parents end up exploiting their children in the pursuit of their greedy desires. Most parents who have well-established family channels often begin to rely on their children and filming eye-catching things to keep their audience's attention. Families post personal moments like using the potty for the first time, revealing her embarrassing secret that her child has, and making their children participate in wild events for their audience to see and enjoy. They seem to have no regard for their children when things like this happen. Children don't understand the extent of the internet and the fact that when something is posted, it can never really be deleted. So even if a child does say that they want to be filmed, parents need to be well informed and have good intentions to make the ultimate decision of whether or not something personal should be posted. If the parent does make the decision to post something personal, they can also consider how this can affect the child throughout the rest of their lives. The child's name will be linked to whatever's posted, and if it's too personal, this can affect their ability to get jobs, build relationships with people, and it can even affect their dating life. Not only does it create tension between relationships, but it can also damage a child's self-perception. According to the HuffPost, 60% of people using social media reported that it has impacted their self-worth in a negative way. Audiences often build a belief of someone's personality based on the content that they are presented. And once a child grows up, it can be difficult to break out of that and gain a strong, true sense of self, of identity. So let's take a look at some popular family content creators who have continuously exploited their kids. Some of the most prominent members of the community are the Ace family, 8 Passengers, and Micah Stouffer. Although their content often explores the previously discussed themes, their reviewed content delves into the world of oversharing details and being involved in controversial subjects. The Ace family, a channel with 19 million followers, has been under fire recently for filming a child walk around a mall eating male-shaped genitalia candy. 8 Passengers received criticism on what seemed to be harmful disciplining techniques, including not feeding their children, taking away their child's mattress, and sending one of them off to a dangerous survival camp in the desert. Micah Stouffer even went as far as adopting an autistic child from China, making her audience pay for it, exploiting this child for views, and giving the child back to the foster care system just 2 years later. Now that we've discussed how children have been exploited, let's review the community guidelines for children on YouTube. Everybody knows that extra precautions need to be taken in order to ensure the well-being of children, especially when they partake in the entertainment industry. However, when taking a closer look at YouTube's community guidelines, I noticed that there were barely any measures being taken to prevent exploitation. The only things that are stated are the banning of the sexualization of minors, no harmful acts or distressing acts towards minors, and no misleading content, which is the bare minimum of what should be expected from YouTube. The mainstream media and Department of Labor set strict regulations on child actors. Regulations that are upheld are required work permits for kids, protection of the child actor's earnings under the Coogan Law, and no disruption of education, and set limits on how much a child can work weekly. These guidelines try to prevent the exploitation of children against greedy parents and producers, and need to be implemented into YouTube community guidelines. In the vlogging world right now, there's so much gray area, and that can add stress onto a child's life. There are no clear distinctions between work life and home life. There are no happy moments that aren't interrupted by a camera being shoved into their face. And there's no guarantee that a child is getting any of the percentage of the money earned stored. There's no strict guidelines that parents need to follow, so it makes the potential for abuse and exploitation much more likely. The genre of family vlogging can be very wholesome, and when parents execute it with well intentions and strict guidelines, but there's so much potential for exploitation from it as well. There are not many studies on the effect of family vlogging and social media on children, and not knowing that should make parents realize that they need to set the boundaries to ensure the safety and the health of their kids. Sure, hearing about those embarrassing stories may seem a little bit fun, and watching a family is also pretty entertaining, but is family vlogging something you should be endorsing? Would you want to have millions of people know the name of all your family members? Would you want a complete stranger on the internet to know everything about you? Thank you.
Judges, we okay to go on, or do you need a second?
I think I'm good.
Every time I'm in the car with my grandmother on my way to school, I turn the car radio to One Love Hip Hop, my favorite radio station where rap songs play all day long. One day, my grandmother said to me, "I don't understand how you can listen to this garbage. All these rappers ever talk about is violence, money, and drugs. Rap is nothing compared to the real music from my generation." At that moment, I thought to myself, despite super meaningful and clean lyrics and an overall big fan base, rap is still not universally accepted just because of prior misjudgments. But how could a genre be so misunderstood when, according to Nielsen's Music 2017 year-end report, rap overtook rock music as the most popular genre? When we look at the Billboard charts today, we constantly see rappers like Drake, Cardi B, and Travis Scott in the top spots. Rap music not only helped to define Black culture, but it made its way into American culture. Now that rap music plays a big part in our society, we must get a deeper understanding of the genre. Today, let's rock a rhyme by first examining the history of rap music, second, learning what makes rap a unique genre, and finally, understanding the impacts rap music has had on society today. Bronx, New York, 1970. Funk, soul, and disco melodies fill the streets and envelop the buildings that occupy them. There's a block party, and the only thing hampering the music that ties the scene together is a 6-foot man that interrupts each tune with an announcement. Carried by his enjoyment of the music and irked by the interruptions, a man by the name of DJ Kool Herc chooses to fill each pause with a consistent beat, and inadvertently revolutionizes music. Over time, while rap became a more consistent genre of music to listen and dance to, the need for MCs in this scene proliferated. It was chiefly inspired by a group named Sugar Hill Gang when they released the first ever rap song called Rapper's Delight in 1979. The most iconic line was, "I said a hip, hop, I hip you to the hippie, a hip, hip, hop, and you don't stop." Millions of people were singing along as that song reached the Billboard Top 40. This was a transition from MCs who simply wanted to get the crowd moving to rappers who wanted to share a meaningful message. This same year marked a milestone for rap when the singer by the name of Curtis Blow became the first rapper to be signed to a renowned record label, Mercury Records. With this notable success, rap was on its way to its golden era. By 1984, rap lyrics started to become more complex. The progression of sound skyrocketed. Denser beats, faster raps, and new sampling technology took place. Notable groups during the time, such as Run DMC, A Tribe Called Quest, and Public Enemy, used their lyrics as a vocal protest. As rap music grew in popularity, it was inevitable for it to spread across the country. During the late 1980s, there was a rise in West Coast rappers. These rappers rapped about their personal experiences living in the economically depressed areas of Oakland and Los Angeles, California. More controversial topics, such as pimping, liquor, and other aspects of this urban life were prevalent. Rappers like Too Short and Ice-T rose in fame during this period, and NWA even made national headlines when they released their song F the Police. It was a protest song in response to police brutality, both cautionary and emblematic. This song placed the group on the FBI's radar and caused the FBI to claim that hip-hop, more specifically gangster rap, is America's public enemy. Now that we have both the East and West Coast in the rap game, rivalries began. These rivalries between the East and West Coast mostly centered around the differences in the style and content of rap. However, issues between culture and music were never only divided against the geographical lines. Rap was public, as well as personal. Most iconically, Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. dissed each other in their songs, which eventually led to their untimely, unsolved murders. Not only did the 1990s witness conflict on the coast, but they saw females stepping into the spotlight. Rap music had a bad reputation for antagonizing women, but female rappers wanted to change that narrative. Rappers such as Salt and Pepper gave us Grammy-worthy acts, while others like Mick Light and Queen Latifah released critically acclaimed albums. Their achievements are what prove that females can be just as successful as males in the rap industry. In the 2000s onwards, we see new rappers come in and evolve rap to what we know it as we know it today. If anything, rap has made it clear. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. There is room for you, and we're glad to accommodate your success. Next, we'll learn what makes rap a unique genre of music. Rappers' success begs the question of what made their music so famous in the first place? Well, the recipe for success is a lot simpler than you might think. Every rap song has 3 elements. There is content, the what's being said, flow, the rhythm, and delivery, the tone. The greatness of a rap song is measured in its bars. A bar is equivalent to 1 line of lyrics or half of a rhyme. In the rap industry, it is common practice to write rap songs using 16 bars, but nobody truly knows why it's done this way. With all these musical terms, it might be easy to mix up rap with other genres, like hip-hop. Rap itself is a vocal technique, and hip-hop is a culture. Furthermore, rap is so much more than the words laid on the beat made. In fact, rap songs share certain commonalities other genres of music don't. Reza Bruno of Time magazine states, "In an era of increasingly complex identity politics, the perspectives that rappers share hit home. These perspectives rappers share are based on the common themes found in rap music, such as raising social awareness on issues like gang violence or the story of rags to riches, where rappers talk about how they went from being poor to having money, and most frequently, the hardships of urban life." When was the last time you heard a country song talk about growing up in a fatherless household with a single mother on welfare just trying to get by? It is without a doubt that rap has proven itself to be one of a kind. Finally, we will now understand the impacts rap music has had on society today. With so much meaning tied to the beat and words of rap, there has been real-life implications resulting. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry explains, "Rap lyrics that talk about suicide, violence, and inappropriate sexual content leads to risky behaviors in teens and young adults. This is evident through a study done by Emory University. 522 black females between the ages of 14 and 18 were divided into two groups. One group of females listened to rap 14 hours per week, and the other group did not. It was found that the females who listened to rap music 14 hours per week were 3 times more likely to get in a fight with a teacher, 2.5 times more likely to be arrested, and 1.5 times more likely to use drugs or alcohol. On the bright side, rap music is not all negative in nature. There have been many positive impacts the genre has had. Cambridge University Department of Psychology explains that a great deal of rap music, with its rags to riches narrative trajectories, display positive visual imagery, a psychotherapeutic technique common among sports stars, in which one envisions the place where one would like to be, as to facilitate one's progression to a better mental place. This shows a cathartic relief for both listeners and artists, where they can have a change or renewal in their emotions. Cambridge University did a further study analyzing rappers' brains when they freestyle. They found that parts of the brain responsible for emotion, language, motivation, and motor and processing functions were triggered. Triggering these parts of the brain is what can help improve neurological illnesses. Furthermore, rap music is a great outlet to spread social awareness and connect people. Many rappers promote peace and anti-violent acts through their music. Tupac, for example, wanted to see the end to the war on drugs and the war on poverty. Listeners of rap gain a sense of hope because they see these artists succeed despite facing the hardships of inner city life, which then tells the listener they too can succeed in their own way. With the growing popularity of rap music, many schools across the country have implemented programs that center around hip-hop. For example, many schools in New York have a program called Hip-Hop Therapy that focuses on giving students a form of healthy expression. Overall, people have come to understand that there's so much value, understanding, and learning to be found in and pursued from rap. Rap comes from the humble beginnings of rebelling against the status quo. Now, rappers have become the status quo themselves. Rapper Chuck D. "It is not the time to reject rap, but rather embrace it, because rap has never shied away from us. Today, we rocked a rhyme by first examining the history of rap music. Then, we learned what made rap a unique genre. And finally, we understood the impacts rap music has had on society today. Rap was influential enough to insert itself into one of the many aspects of American culture. Future musical artists will not only continue to define what rap music means to the music industry, but to our personal lives."
Everyone who knows me can tell you one thing for certain. Everyone who knows me can tell you one thing for certain. I'm not a perfect child. All of you might be seeing this But that's a far stretch from the truth. Like any other 16-year-old, I've been on the brunt end of more than a few lectures. Sometimes it's clean up your room and be nice to your brothers, while other times it's more along the lines of, we're half an hour late, either get the tie right or you're wearing a clip-on. Regardless of the message, my abundance of scoldings, reprimands, and berations never failed to bring back such fond memories. Still, one recurring complaint stands out from the rest. It's not about chores or grades, delivered by my loving mother. In one ear, out the other. You only hear what you want to hear. Now, it probably comes as no surprise that I ignored the critique. In the purely metaphorical fashion of an angry toddler, my fingers were in my ears and I was screaming, "I can't hear you." Ironic, isn't it? But I'm willing to bet that regardless of age, that problem still holds true. I'm not the only person with selective hearing, or selective reading, or selective interpreting. And I'm not the only one who rejects ideas that don't align with his own, or cherry-picks the events to fit the argument. This is the conscious and unconscious reality of confirmation bias, the psychological tendency to pursue information that confirms our existing beliefs, and to dismiss the information that challenges or conflicts with them. As my parents warned me long ago, that extends far beyond my childhood stubbornness, shaping how we perceive our world, the people in it, and the beliefs they hold, misinformed or not. So today, I'll begin by first lecturing you about the not-so-inconspicuous place of confirmation bias in our lives. Second, exploring how it's come to be this way, before finally, reciting the age-old mantra that your actions have, you guessed it, consequences. In all due respect, I'll admit that my childhood temper tantrum isn't the best explanation of a complex behavioral inclination. For that, we need to consider something of a little more significance in everyday society, something which affects the very fabric of our lives. Conspiracy theories. According to a recent survey, nearly 80% of Americans believe in at least one unscientifically proven idea. Allow me to say that again. 80%. This includes the flat earth theory, healing crystals, the Loch Ness monster, palm reading, and, my personal favorite, the Illuminati. Now compare that to the mere 14% of people who report that they have a great deal of confidence in academia. In reality, the widespread acceptance of seemingly far-fetched beliefs alongside the rejection of proven fact is a powerful demonstration of confirmation bias in action. After deciding on a specific narrative, regardless of accuracy, we no longer gather and process information objectively, but rather pick out specific pieces of data that validate our initial thoughts. Even when the truth is substantiated by evidence, common sense, and Google, people ignore the larger picture and point towards the few anecdotal sources in support of their own ideas. Best explained by Dr. Sharm Heshmat, a professor at the University of Illinois. When people want a certain idea or concept to be true, they end up believing it to be true. But, as much as conspiracy theories are a fun distraction from the real world, confirmation bias concerns itself with greater matters than just, are lizard people living among us, and was the moon landing a hoax? Nowhere is this better felt, and more deeply rooted, than in the courtroom. Despite instruction to keep an open mind, jurors often fail to separate themselves from pre-existing beliefs. In fact, according to a 2016 study performed by psychologist and jury consultant Alan Turkheimer, a staggering 38% of jurors make their verdict early in the case, and cling to that perspective without considering opposing viewpoints. Ambiguous evidence is interpreted as more than such, and memory recall favors the familiar line of thought. Confirmation bias isn't just blocking out new information, it's filtering the ideas you do and don't want to listen to. And as you probably guessed by now, this doesn't end with the law. In medicine, physicians often form diagnoses after very little discussion, and use later symptoms to reaffirm their earlier thoughts, leading to nearly 12 million misdiagnoses annually. In politics, people tend to consume media sources that align with their own leanings. Even within the inconsequential world of online shopping, buyers only take into account the reviews which match their induced mindset. Simply put, once you've made up your mind and that item's in your cart, it's unlikely that anything will change, for better or for worse. So the question becomes, is there a definitive good or bad when it comes to confirmation bias? It makes sense that all of us are a little headstrong at times, but that doesn't mean it's inherently wrong to stand behind your beliefs, is it? As it happens, the answer isn't completely black and white. Contrary to common belief and typical connotations, bias isn't inherently bad. Our brains have limited capacity to process information, and biases are a way to manage daily operations. In a realistic sense, there's only so much that a person can feasibly handle at one time. To critically evaluate every single idea or belief that passes into your head would be impossible, not to mention tiring. We need bias to interpret and simplify our world. But it's also a bit more than that. More than a necessity, it's natural. Revealed in a 2019 study by neuroscientists Andreas Kapps and Tali Short, the regions of the brain responsible for decision-making are dampened in sensitivity when confronted with conflicting ideas. It's an automatic numbing response that we don't really have control over. The researchers split a group of 42 adults into pairs and asked each to individually judge whether the price of an estate property was higher or lower than a listed value. Then, the subjects were asked to evaluate how confident they were, betting between 1 to 60 cents. In the second phase of the experiment, participants were reminded of their initial judgments, and this time were allowed to view their partner's assessment of the property value, thus introducing either a confirming or invalidating influence. The study discovered that when partners disagreed, they lowered their bets by an average of 3.5 cents. However, when the partners agreed, they increased their bets by a much greater margin, 8 cents. These findings mirrored the activity levels of the brain's posterior medial prefrontal cortex, or PMFC. Disagreement led to lower activity, and agreement led to higher activity. A startling fact alone, this indicates that our decisions aren't as well reasoned as we think. As it happens, the human mind only pays attention when an idea is comfortable or easy. It's important to note, however, that not everything happens on a biological level. Though our physiology may be responsible for some of our thoughts, confirmation bias is, in part, perpetuated by the individuals themselves. That's because, for as much as we might want to deny it, we don't enjoy seeing both sides of the spectrum. In most cases, it's actually the opposite. First investigated by renowned social psychologist Leon Festinger, the cognitive dissonance theory revolves around the idea that we don't like to have two conflicting beliefs. In the same way that someone might feel the need to justify their latest purchase, or a smoker might try to avoid cigarettes because they understand the risks. Our minds like to keep our thoughts consistent in order to avoid any stress through contradiction. By immersing ourselves in our own viewpoint and adapting to the presence of confirmation bias, we avoid the hard discussions, even when they're much needed. Especially today, that's a motivated response with real implications, the main issue being summed up neatly in one word: misinformation. There are still a number of people who believe that vaccines are causing autism, that the global threat of climate change and rising oceans are a hoax, and that COVID-19 isn't real, solely because they become trapped in their own bubble of confirming evidence. In a world where sending out a news story is as simple as clicking a button, and skepticism only comes into play when it's against what we personally hold true, there's a problem. Consider for one moment the thousands of lives that could have been saved had we considered the pandemic an issue sooner, had we not downplayed the facts in favor of the more comfortable narrative. When we close our minds off to other viewpoints, we close our lives off to the truth. The hateful hostility of slander campaigns between Democrats and Republicans is still an ongoing crisis. The gender wage gap is still a real problem for many, and the implicit racism towards all ethnic groups has still survived. It isn't a question of right or wrong, but rather if we're willing to accept that we don't know enough to define most of the choices we face. According to Dartmouth researcher Brendan Nyhan, it's threatening to admit that you're wrong. It's why so many examples of misinformation are from issues that dramatically affect our lives and how we live. Confirmation bias doesn't belong to just one group, one person, or one alignment. It's a human problem, something we all take part in. So, go ahead. Make your judgment about whether or not this speech is worth your time, or if I'm actually a perfect child. But note that as you do so, confirmation bias is affecting your perceptions and thoughts, however great or small the decision. And that's the point. Because regardless of if you acknowledge it, even your beliefs on confirmation bias are being influenced by the bias itself. Take it, don't take it, throw a temper tantrum with your fingers and your ears. Confirmation bias may influence your decisions, but it doesn't make them for you. And so, it's time that I admit, maybe my mother was right all along. There's a little bit of hear what you want to hear in all of us. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the portion of Varsity Informative Speakers. Thank you.